I would like to call to order tonight's study session of July 24th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And all council members are here except for Council Member Deputy Mayor Hofstadter and Council Member Newman. They both have called in for excuses. Do I have a motion to excuse Council Member Newman?
Okay. I make a motion to excuse Councilmember Newman.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Member Newman is excused. And now for Councilmember Hofstadter. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to excuse Deputy Mayor Hochstetter.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
And I second that motion.
Excused and all in favor?
Aye.
Then are excused. We will go to our first item on business is community court update, and we have Judge Swain with us tonight.
Yes, hello. Hello, Mayor and council members, and those of you who are on Zoom. It's my absolute pleasure to come and give you an update on what's going on with our therapeutic court, also called community court. It's a little bit easier to say and a little bit nicer kind of wording. So although we do a lot of therapeutic activities, we tend to just call it community court. So I've got a little Zoom presentation that kind of takes us through to help everybody understand exactly what we do in community court. In mainstream, oh, first of all, let me introduce Summer Johnson. Sorry, Summer is here with me to my right. She is our community court case manager. And without Summer, this program just simply couldn't exist. She's the guiding force for all of it, helping all of the participants connect to all of the resources that they need, which is the main thing that we do in community court is connect. So in mainstream court, we have someone comes in for arraignment. It's a very formal process. You advise them of the charge. The city asks for conditions of release that could include bail. It could include other conditions and prohibitions, such as no use of alcohol or drugs, not returning to a particular address or business, things like that. And then there could be an application for a public defender. They may hire an attorney. They'd come back about a month later for a pretrial. We might do that a few times and then come to some sort of disposition agreement of how they're going to resolve the case. It could be a plead guilty as charged. It could plead guilty to an amended charge. It could be a stipulated order of continuance, which is like a contract where we keep the case open. The defendant does some things and then it's later dismissed. Or you could have a jury trial. And, it's up to the defendant to kind of do whatever needs to be done as part of either the agreement or the sentence of the court. We have probation, also called court services now, and probation can be helpful sometimes in mainstream court to get people connected to services. But it's still pretty limited as far as how involved probation gets. So that's, mainstream court. In community court, I kind of keep an eye out for who could be a good candidate. And if we find one that's good, the city will, and the public defender will connect them with Summer, and then things happen outside of the courtroom. I don't know what happens. What happens?
Summer Johnson, nice to meet you.
Just a
guys.
quick overview, because I'm going to do
Yeah.
some stuff.
I meet with them and I do a needs-based assessment, which is called a CCAT. And we just kind of talk and go over, they're just basic questions. It's probably a 20-minute assessment, but we end up taking an hour because I really want to dive in there and see what's going on. And we come up with a plan, which I call their plan, because it is. And we do things that they need, like maybe they need housing, they want to do school, they want to get back on it or get back into the employment world, or, I mean, there's so many different options, treatment, mental health, and we make this plan and they agree to it. And then I go back and I meet with the court and present the plan to them.
So based on that conversation that happens outside the court doors, essentially, there's a determination made between Summer, the defendant, the prosecutor, and the public defender. Is this person a good candidate? And then if they are, then we dive in, right? So SUD means substance use disorder. And that is one of the big things that we are seeing in therapeutic court, in community court. That's a need that most people have. If you're committing crimes, oftentimes, more often than not, there is a substance use disorder or substance use abuse, something going on with alcohol or drugs. Mental illness goes right along with that. So if you're committing crimes, there's usually, frankly, a combination of, you see that most often, right? There's the combination of both substance use disorder and mental illness. And the more that I dive into, you know, what is the reason that people are committing crimes, it really boils down to trauma that that person has gone through, which has created then some kind of mental health issue that has created then the alcohol and drug problem. And they all go together. And once you have that substance use disorder and a mental health problem, they just exacerbate each other. And it's really hard to get out of that cycle of, you know, abuse of drugs and alcohol. Homelessness and poverty are other things that usually come from trauma, right? So you have some trauma thing that happened that led to poverty, that led to homelessness, that led to the mental illness and the substance use disorder and crime, right? Not everybody who has these things commits crimes, but when you have people who are committing crimes, oftentimes you will see one or more, usually more of these items, if they're regularly committing crimes. And so these are some of the main things that Summer addresses with the participants. So Summer, when you do it's called a CCAT assessment. When you do your CCAT assessment, I'm sure you address these things. What else do you address?
So we'll address things, I mean, oh my gosh, there's an endless list. We address, gosh, I'm just trying to think, co-occurring, which is, I try to, like she was saying, a lot of people might have the drug and the mental health issues going on, and that's called co-occurring. So we'll address that, and I'll try to find them the kind of help they need in that aspect. Clothes, food, address
Driver's
rides,
license.
transportation. They might not have their license, so that's another thing we can put on their plan and help them get that back. Some people have, I mean, I don't do anything with CPS or anything like that, but some people have asked to see their children again. So I'll do everything I can to help them get into housing, clothing, employment, and write a letter if I need to, saying they're doing good in community court. So, I mean, it's an endless thing that we're working on. Like, there's always a new need around the corner, I swear.
Yes. Mhm.
Mhm.
Is there sometimes they can't help.
Yeah, well, yes. Yes, that's one. We normally don't have children in the courtroom. We make exceptions at graduation for, you know, our participants to bring family members. So normally it's a no. We have a brand new community court participant, Samantha or Savannah. It's either Samantha or Savannah. And she has a tiny baby, maybe 2 months old. So she brings her baby with her, and that's okay. The baby's very well behaved and very adorable. But we generally do not encourage that. Every once in a while, someone has to bring their child with them, and we try and make arrangements for them to, you know, have the child outside of the courtroom because it's very distracting And as sweet and lovely as children are, we really try to we discourage that from court hearings because the participant or defendant who has that child is going to be distracted, trying to keep the child settled and comfortable. Usually they're distracted. And so then they can't hear what the court's like. It's hard, even if a person has nobody else they're worried about, it's hard for them to listen to me because it's a very nerve-wracking situation to be in court and to be talked to about, all of these things that you're supposed to be doing, and it can get very distracting. And as far as, kids, I mean, you and Tom know more about the challenges because they come to court and they normally don't have a kid with them. And so Summer and Tom work it out behind the scenes so that the kids are taken care of somewhere else.
Yeah, that is another thing to list of things I refer them out to, like Working Connections, childcare, or DSHS, things like that. But it's not always available for them.
So when you look at the costs of what does it take from the city to pay for, let's give an example of a theft charge. Somebody who has a long history of theft. So maybe the city is going to recommend 30 days in jail. Or on the other hand, maybe we can try this community court program instead of the 30 days in jail. As you probably know, jail costs have gotten astronomical lately. Not only that, but sometimes it's hard to keep people in jail or even get people to jail based on the nature of the crime. When they're gross misdemeanors or misdemeanors, sometimes the jail says, oh, we're full. We don't want to take a theft charge. We don't want to take a reckless driving charge because, we need to keep that one bed open for such and such. Doesn't happen all the time, but that's a factor that I have to consider because the jails are getting more and more full. And I believe that's due greatly to the mental health challenges that we have because the jails are full of people who have mental health issues and should be in a facility like Western or Eastern State Hospital, but we don't have space. So they end up in jail. So anyway, we have a jail crowding issue. And it's also very expensive to keep people in jail, and I'm cognizant of that. And so when we keep people out of jail, we save that jail budget for somebody who truly needs it. And then maybe we can take this person with the theft, have them move into community court if they're amenable. They have that conversation with Summer. They have to want to participate in the program, and it's not easy. They have to come to court a lot. They have to jump through all kinds of hoops, whether they're working with drug treatment, whether they're working with mental health treatment, and all the other things that Summer will work with them on in order to, fix that underlying issue that's causing all of the things that lead to the crime. So the costs to the city are significantly lessened. Now, granted, we do have to have hearings. We have more hearings for community court than we do for mainstream court because we do lots and lots of check-ins. There's also a lot of behind the scenes work. Summer meets with the public defender and the prosecuting attorney weekly to staff the cases and talk about, okay, how's this person doing and what are the challenges here and what do we need to work on? So there's a lot of hands-on time behind the scenes. And yes, it does take more court time than just putting someone in jail for 30 days. But ultimately, if we're successful, we're going to lift that person up out of the hole that they're in so that when that they're graduated from community court, we're hoping and our fingers are crossed that they are not going to commit any more thefts. And it's not 100%, right? And sometimes you have to try that treatment over and over and over and over again before it works. But the hope is, and the numbers, we'll have to wait and see what the numbers are because ours is a pretty new pilot program. But if you look at other courts that are doing a community court program, you'll see that recidivism goes down quite a bit when you work with a program like this. And so it does save the city money. In addition, we're working with what was a grant, but now is a state appropriation. So we have the state pays for summer's costs. And there's new appropriation that I've requested that hopefully the city will agree to, additional personnel, having a dedicated mental health therapist, because that's our number one missing piece, is having access to mental health therapy. And I am hoping to hire a great one to work with our city directly. And the other piece of that puzzle that we were missing is a dedicated peer counselor. And Summer can speak to peer counseling a little bit
Yeah.
more.
The peer counseling looks, well, I wear a lot of different hats in my job, so it looks like a lot of help, really. But it's somebody who, the peer counselor I've interviewed a couple, but the one I've worked with and taught particularly has been so great for her peers because they relate to her. It's somebody who was in community court. She knows exactly what they're going through. We've been doing, we do peer groups on Monday evenings on Zoom, so everybody can be available. And what we do is we just set goals in there. I meet and do one-on-ones if I can when I have her, so it's really helpful. And then she does things like she'll do assignments with them, like let's work on our emotions or other mental health things. Maybe we'll have a week where we talk about things that we can share with each other. So like, what are you good at? And can you help me with that? And I can help you with this. And it's just a really good thing for the peer support. And she's available to help sign them up for medical through the state. So many other things as well, helping them get their appointments set and just helping to mediate, kind of like I do, but on a different aspect of it.
And so what we've found and through, my training and what I've been doing to kind of learn more about how therapeutic court works and why it's great, learning that the peer counselor is a really critical part of that. And this is a person who has gone through the struggles, generally, has gone through the struggles of that list of things, the homelessness and the poverty and the addiction and the mental health, and then now have risen above it. And so they are an example for our participants who are struggling and are in it, and they get to know that person and identify with that person. And when you are friendly and, close with a person that, you can see as a mentor, that you can trust because that person has gone through what you're going through or something similar, that can create motivation and connectedness. What I see so much of the time with our participants and through defendants, over the course of, the 20 some years that I've been in criminal justice, is that when people come to court as a defendant, they really feel like they're not part of the community. They're the naughty one. They're the ones, out there in the, in the old timey, when they used to put them in the, what do they call it? Stocks, right? So they're just like sitting out there in the town square, like in their, stuck out there for everyone to laugh at and point and say that person was bad. And, and so that's what we're doing when we have them come to court and they're, in front of the judge and there's all these people and you don't really understand exactly what's going on. And it's intimidating for that person sometimes. I mean, sometimes they're so used to coming to court, it's not that, but, and so they're feeling on the outside of the community rather than on the inside of the community. And what Summer does and the peer counselor, they help to bring that person back into the community, finding the things that the person is good at, the really wonderful qualities that each participant has, because everybody's got good qualities, and yes, it could be like a long list of really naughty things that have happened and, that have, been bad for the community. But, the more that you do that, the more you feel excluded, and bringing them back into the community can make them feel, like, why I don't want to commit a crime. I'm part of this community too, So healing the community by healing the individual. And so that's kind of what I've been talking about here is bringing that individual back into the community so that they are no longer excluded and we can celebrate them like we do at our graduations, which are really fun. Celebrating that individual, and because we've learned so much about them because they come to court so much, and we check in, we say, how's it going? And then we learn, oh, they're good at this, or they're doing that, or they're interested in this, and learning about the interests and encouraging them to follow through with those interests brings them back to community through that healing. So. The court doesn't. It's sometimes Summer
Do
does.
all the time. I worry about them,
She-
I care.
Summer gets very close
Mhm.
with our participants because she's working with them so much.
Yeah, and some of them like to keep in contact with me and just let me know they're still doing good, and I think that's so great. I get so excited, and I do things on the outside like gather clothes and stuff, and they all want to help with stuff. So I think that they do take a lot of pride in their graduating and being part of the community again, and I think that's probably my most favorite part. It's like, oh, I see them outside and I don't have to run. They're always like, give me a hug, and I'm
Yeah.
doing so good. Look, I have my family, and it's just like, oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So-
So, oh, yes.
What is your job? I mean, are you a social worker or do you have a?
Well, I do case management for this. I'm kind of the program coordinator. I do peer support. I do a lot of different things. I have my associates in human services and in drug and alcohol counseling.
Oh,
So I have both those associates. So I kind of just a little bit of everything
okay.
that I can bring to the table. And
Sounds like you're in the right spot.
thank you. I feel like I am, and I enjoy what I do so much.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And it's been just an absolute pleasure to work with Summer because she is so good at what she does and so committed to the whole process. So from the point of view of the prosecutor is the individual who makes the final determination, yes or no. Is this person going to be a good candidate? Are we going to let them into community court? Because not everybody can be in community court. And not everybody, even if the charge might be a good charge, not everybody's ready for community court, or maybe this person has already kind of done everything they need to do and they're just on their way. They've done inpatient treatment, they're in an outpatient treatment program, they've got housing, they've got all the pieces in place. So they don't necessarily need all the support of the community court. So the prosecutor is the one who makes that final decision. Summer meets with them to do that initial assessment. She and Tom, our public defender, work together to decide, Tom's got his own, connection to that person, have their own conversation, and then Summer comes in with her input, and then they go to Ivor and then have a conversation with the prosecutor, and they make their recommendations, and then Ivor says yes or no. And then I'm sure a lot of times Ivor can say, yes, I like the plan you've put together here, but does Ivor ever say that?
Every time.
And so he will, add some things, or modify some things, because his hat is to, he wears the hat of, I need to protect the community. I need to make sure the community is safe to the best of my ability as the prosecutor. So he's the one who says yes, no, and here are the terms. So he's the final say. But it is a team process for sure. And that's evidenced by, the check-ins that you do every week, and then the court appearances every week that we have. Not everybody has to appear every week. In the beginning, they definitely appear every week because we want to make sure they're on track.
And accountability.
And the accountability, right? That's the big part of it is, and we, my favorite slogan for this process is compassionate accountability, because we need them to be accountable. This is court, like it's touchy-feely court. It's hippy-dippy court a little bit, right? But it's still court. And we still have to have the accountability, because if a person cannot comply, with the agreement that's been made, then we've got to kick them out. And that process is the hammer, right? And we have never had to do this in Sumner yet. What we do have is we've got at least 1, 2 that we've entered, and then they've been doing okay. They might have struggled, and then we completely lose track of them. And so they're out there on warrant status right now. Is it just 2?
Yeah, it's just 2 from a long time ago.
Yeah. So, and in Summer night, every once in a while, I say, have you heard from Christine?
I'm like, no, but I try every week.
Yeah. And
because I'm
so,
not gonna give up.
eventually we'll find them again, right? Eventually we'll see them again. And, who knows what is going to happen? I don't know. I'm not the prosecutor. The prosecutor will make a determination. Is this person, done with community court, or are we going to try again? So, what happens if, there's multiple new law violations and no effort to, really get to the crux of what's going on? Then the prosecutor will make a motion to revoke the agreement. Person's already, excuse me. The person has already agreed that the police report is all the evidence in the case. So then I simply read the police report, find them guilty, because there's always enough evidence in the police report to find them guilty. And then I will go ahead and sentence them. And then the sentence will be based on a number of different things, what the appropriate sentence is. The prosecutor will make a recommendation, the defense attorney makes a recommendation, and then I, figure out, what the ultimate ending is for that person. And it might be, we're just going to close out your case with a conviction and, hope you do well, or it could be jail time. And luckily we haven't had to do that process yet, because most of our people have been doing really well. So
I'm pretty
I'm really happy
receptive.
about it.
So I have a question. You said initially that the defendants have to come in weekly.
Yes.
I'm sure there's some who have work obligations. Are they allowed to do those meetings via Zoom?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great.
Yes, and we have a number of people that do their hearings regularly through Zoom. We like to see them in person once in a while, and so we do every once in a while make a special accommodation to get them in person. Some people have, really young children, transportation problems, or work obligations, and so they are permitted to attend via Zoom, especially because they're so often, right? Yes and no. That's not the type of case. Like the type of case we're seeing, it could be a trespass, it could be a theft, it could be even a driving. We have somebody with a driving on a suspended license right now, but the underlying issue is alcohol or drugs, along with that mental health.
I was gonna say, or mental health.
Yeah. So it's almost always there's a mental health component to our program.
9 out of 10 people, it's mental health. And like, some of them have already been through treatment numerous times. And so I'm like, let's try something different. Let's do the mental health. And it's really neat to see the change, because they've got all the tools. They just need to know they need the mental health tools to work all together. So.
Right. And, and when I say mental health, this is a very broad spectrum, right? Because, not everybody has a mental health problem that needs to be addressed with drugs. I would say that's rare for our people. Or,
No, there's such a good mix.
Okay. So a lot of people, they don't need, they don't have necessarily chemical imbalance, but they have that trauma, that underlying
Yeah.
trauma of whatever has happened to create this, snowball effect to get us to where we are at. And so addressing that underlying trauma in some kind of mental health therapy. The other program that we use a lot in court, I don't know that everybody's in it, I know at least one person's in it, is the moral recognition therapy course. I love this course. It's a 26-week or 26 module course that really gets into kind of mental health issues through a peer-based group. You can speak probably more to it than I can, but.
That's always Stacy.
But Stacy Lamont, who is our probation court services specialist, she teaches that, or it's not called teaching. What is it called? It's monitoring it.
Yeah, she monitors
Because it's
that.
a peer-based course. And so you have your group, and each group is going, each member of the group is going through a different module, but you all talk about it together. But I have found, and I think that the statistics are showing that this moral recognition therapy course is way more effective than so many of the other things that we've sent people to do. This is especially effective in domestic violence, because so much of the time you have a domestic violence issue that, when I look at it, I might say, well, this isn't really a classic domestic violence batterer type of issue. It's drugs and alcohol are involved. People lose their emotional control and, act out. And so that moral recognition therapy is really a wonderful tool for that. So
Judge Swain, would you remind the council what types of crimes are not eligible for
we're going to get
therapeutic
in.
or- Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are. Now, this is a working list, okay? Eligible crimes: theft, stolen property, trespass, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, malicious mischief, damaging property. These are the things that are definitely eligible. Maybe eligible are these things in the middle. And it would depend on the type of crime, or the factors in each crime. Okay. And then the crimes on the right, we generally say are not eligible, but it's not necessarily exclusive. Sometimes we find assaults that really they're a great candidate for various reasons, but these are not going to be assaults where we have somebody who has been harmed, physically really bad. This is going to be one of those things where maybe there is a push or a shove, and it's really the alcohol and drug issues. We have somebody in there for a driving on suspended second. Sometimes it's not appropriate, but in this particular participant, the prosecutor and I made an exception. And so even though this is our working list, there are some times where we make exceptions based on the facts of each case. For when there's felony things going on, we generally are very cautious. No, if there's pending felony charges, they're not eligible for community court. There's no sex offenses allowed in community court. So even though I see that possibly eligible indecent exposure, sometimes that can have a sexual element, sexual motivation element, and that certainly would not be a good candidate for community court. So although this is generally what we work from, it's not completely exclusive, because we're looking at the individual and we're looking at all the facts related to that particular individual's crime as well. But this is, a general rule. And this is, and this comes from best practices, kind of a nationwide best practices study. So are there any questions about that?
Oh, I just have one quick one, just because I'm curious. There really isn't, I'm assuming, a lot of telephone harassment because, well, people have cell phones and not home phones. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but that sort of makes me think about social media. Would that sort of be the same thing? Or-
Yeah, telephone harassment can be, cell phones for sure. And there's also cyber stalking that's relevant to that. But yeah, the harassments, that's, or harassment, telephone harassment, cyber stalking, that's going to be one of those very kind of, maybe not, but we'll have to look and see exactly what the issues are. And those can result from, domestic violence issues, mental health issues. So, yeah, but this is generally the list we work from. But yeah, but you can see it's a lot of theft. Most of what we see is you know, prowling, stealing stuff, this kind of stuff where it's, you know, homeless people with addictions, struggling to figure out how they're gonna live, how they're gonna get their next fentanyl pill, you know, so. Okay, so this is, feels a little crazy. So I've gone over a lot of this with you already. So the very top, we have arraignment with the attorney. So somebody comes in for their arraignment on a charge of theft. They talk to Tom Guilfoyle, our public defender. And if Tom gets the feeling that this might be a good person for community court, he will probably ask them question, are you interested? Here's a general outline of this program. Are you interested? So if the person is interested, then, you know, pass them off to Summer. If they're not interested, then they just go to a mainstream court. And I mean, we all know how to do that. So, and then, so over there on the far left, the next spot would be the green box there on the far left. Participant receives notice for opt-in hearing. And we really like them to observe community court before they opt in. I like to make sure that they are committed. They've started the process of working with Summer. I don't like to let people in too early because then, you know, they just fall off the wagon pretty fast, it seems like. So, you know, Summer will work with them for sometimes weeks, sometimes a couple of months before they are for sure a good candidate and everybody's agreed on what the plan is going to be. And then we do the enter them in. The CCAT assessment, we talked about that. That's the tool that Summer uses to interview each participant to see if they are eligible. And do you want to talk about a little bit of what types of questions you ask in the CCAT?
Yeah, so I asked some basic questions, obviously who they are. Do they have a license? Things I like to ask right away is I always ask if they have medical and what kind, because that's going to help me direct them where they need to go for resources to ultimately cover the cost for anything they have. And then I go in to talk about their history, their criminal history. And then we talk about drug and alcohol history, nothing really in depth. Like I said, it's a quick assessment. We kind of talk about some mental health questions, emotions. What do we go into? Family, where they're living, what their home life is like. And I ask a little bit of their schooling history and employment and things like that. And then I kind of get to the end and we just kind of put stuff together and I might ask, so why aren't you working? When's the last time you worked? Is that something you're interested in doing? And I ask about disabilities. I will share that I can say almost every single time I do an assessment, somebody is flagged for PTSD or trauma.
Yeah.
That is a huge flag. And that's very sad and unfortunate, but I'm able to utilize that a little bit to steer them towards mental health if they're interested. So I might kind of just talk about that if they're comfortable talking to me about it, and I open the door for that. And yeah, just kind of, I'll ask those basic questions and then I'll kind of just pick on those questions and get a feel for who they are and what they're about.
One of my favorite questions that you ask though.
Are you tired
Yeah.
yet?
She asks
Every
them,
time.
are you tired yet? Tired of, you know, living on the streets, tired of the cycle of drugs, you know? And that's an effective question, right?
It is. I look at them because I mean, I have my history too, and I can relate to a lot of their stuff and I can share my stories with them too. And then I'll just look at them sometimes and I'm like, so are you tired? And sometimes they look at me like, yeah, I am. I really am. And then I'm like, so let's do something about it, you know, but sometimes they are not tired and they're ready to go. And I'm like, I wish I could just tie you up right there for a little while until you get
Right.
tired. But no, and
Yeah.
by tired, I mean, they're just, it's enough's enough. This life is that they're out there doing is, it might have been fun once upon a time, but it's no longer fun. It's survival and it's exhausting and they have lost complete hope of all hope. And so I try to give them back that hope and I think that helps a little bit.
So after that CCAT assessment, then case staffing and SOC conditions. And it's mostly that SOC stipulated order of continuance, which means it's a contract. that the participant enters with the prosecutor. And then the conditions are created by Summer, by Tom, and by Ivor, the whole team. Figures out what the best conditions are for the individual. Those conditions are usually mental health, drug addiction treatment, community service, weekly check-ins with Summer, and appearance at court weekly until it's not weekly anymore. Those are generally what the conditions are. And then there's things on top of it, like get a job, get a driver's license, and these are things they work towards. And then we have that big green box in the middle is the opt-in hearing. This is a fun hearing where I get to welcome the participant to community court. We clap and we get very excited and we tell them how wonderful it's going to be because it really is different. Doing community court is not regular court. Everybody goes by first names. I go by Judge Krista. And I ask them questions about their life. I engage with the participants so that they feel like they're part of our team in community court. And I try and impress that upon them. Like, we really want to welcome you into this program and we want to support you. And then the next week or month, depending, this isn't necessarily week 2, but meeting with the service providers, either in person or virtual resource room. So Summer's got access to
A lot.
a lot of things. And there's virtual resource rooms that different courts participate in, and then she knows where to send them in person as well. And so they get connected to those resources, whatever resources are going to work for them, where they live, what their particular needs are, she connects them. And then if they decide to opt in, the stipulated order of continuance is officially entered. I sign the agreement, and then they enter into the community court, and we schedule their next hearings. If they decide not to opt in, they just go back to mainstream court, and that's it. So just because they go back to mainstream court doesn't mean they aren't offered the same resources. Summer actually helps people all the time that are not in community court, and I'm really grateful to you for doing that. And I'm sure the city is grateful because, she's right there. She's in court with us all day on Thursdays, so that if there's anybody who needs a resource, who needs access to services, Summer is there to go out in the lobby and meet with them, to connect them to those resources, because she knows all the resources. She is well connected in our community. One thing that I really appreciated about Summer is when she first started this job, she reached out to courts all over the region to connect with their community court case managers to find out what they were doing, what was working, what isn't working, and what what works for some courts, for some communities, doesn't necessarily work for us, right? And so we have, we're particular, and this is what's so great about municipal court, is we can do what works for our community. And that's one thing that I absolutely love, why I love municipal court, is because it is so community based. We've been to some continuing education classes together. We've been to a community court retreat recently, and we are going to be doing that more in the future as well. That's part of the monies that we got will pay for those continuing education. There's a really big one that happens yearly. This next year in 2024, it will be in Anaheim. I'm hoping to take the whole team and really get into how to do this and do it well, so that we can really reduce that recidivism. And when we get our participants, they're not what we end up calling frequent flyers. We have our frequent flyers. We know who they are. I can think of like 3 or 4 off the top of my head that we just see over and over and over again in our court in Sumner, because they are problems. They're problematic in our city. And they're problematic because of all the things we've talked about: trauma, homelessness, poverty, mental health issues, drug addiction. And so, what I'm hoping is someday Summer will meet with them and they'll say, yes, I'm tired. let's get some help, so.
I still meet with them and give them resources though, just hoping maybe they'll pull out a piece of paper one day when they are sitting there needing help or know where to call, at least take my business card, so.
Right, right. And that's the
Mhm.
thing. You never know when they're actually going to be tired. And when they're tired, they'll remember that talk they had with Summer and they'll remember, oh, wait, I know who to call now, in this moment.
I just had that happen.
Did you?
with Rebecca.
Right. Yeah, we get emotional sometimes about
Yeah.
it because, we get to know these people and we really want to help them. So weekly meetings, weekly review hearings, we talked about that. Check-ins with their case manager, resources and providers, and then compliance. And if they comply with all their conditions, then they graduate and their case is usually dismissed. Once in a while, it's maybe reduced to a lesser charge, but everybody's thus far that we've had in Sumner, it's a pretty simple agreement where you do this and your case is dismissed at the end. And that's been our graduations, which are a lot of fun. And people get pretty excited when the mayor shows up or a council member shows up. It's like, what, you're here for me? And that really, again, engages them with the community. Like, yes, you are important. We want to celebrate you. And it's important for people to feel like they are part of the community, and those graduations with all of the, kind of fanfare. And I officially dismiss their case and give them a certificate, and you give them a gift and have a little, reception with some food and drinks, and it's really fun. And I think you did say that, some people have just really never even had that kind of,
Yeah, love or any kind of caring. I mean,
Yeah.
for some of these people, just to even have us stop to treat them like a human being is something new to them. Like, wait, they're so used to coming in court or being wherever, and they're just, well, what they always tell me, I'm just a dirt bag or whatever they feel like they're referred to. And, I think at the beginning when we first started, just simply gave somebody a birthday card and they lost it. I mean, they were 54 years old and they'd never had a birthday card, or just somebody to say, hey, I'm really proud of you, because I tell them I'm proud of them all the time, because I am. It's not just lip service, but like when they do good things, I make sure they know, because they've been so used to being recognized for all their bad things that it's okay to do good things. And then when they do good things, they feel good, and then they want to do more good things. And so that's a pretty neat part about it.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, because those of us who come from good homes with good parents, or even just like decent parents, we've had those birthdays and birthday cards and celebrations of our accomplishments. And these people that come from trauma may not have ever had anyone celebrate them. And that, of course, they're on the outside of community when they've been treated to be on the outside of
Mhm.
community, outside of family, outside of friends, outside of this their whole life. And so it's really wonderful to bring them into the fold and say, you're part of our community. So, and that's what happens when you have compliance or substantial compliance. We don't always have perfect compliance. We have little hiccups along the way, but that's why we have court and meet with them so often, is we talk about those hiccups, we talk about those challenges. And so when we do have someone who is struggling in some way in community court, then Summer goes kind of back to the drawing board and say, okay, why are you struggling? Let's talk about this. So sometimes we change the agreement right in the middle of it. Everybody has to agree to change it. But sometimes we do change things and add in some extra level of treatment or support for that person to, take care of, so that, we really get to the root of the problem. But it seems like all the time, we start with this agreement and then down the road you find, oh, actually, there's something else going on. Surprise, surprise.
They know they can trust us now, and that it's
Yeah.
a safe place. And so they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, so there's this too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
man.
then you really get into the levels of trauma that they've been through. So sometimes we change those agreements partway through or extend agreements. Well, you were gonna graduate here, but not quite ready to do that yet. And so we extend it. And sometimes there's, different ways to, create a sanction without removing them completely from the program.
Mhm.
But if they simply, really, fail at it, then we do remove them from the program. The SOC is revoked, and then they're sentenced and go back to mainstream court. This public defense perspective, this is just an example of a criminal history that we might see. So as you can see there's a lot of crimes, and this is just page 1, right? So, and this is not uncommon, to see this number of low-level crimes occurring over and over and over and over, because, of all the things we've talked about, right? But this is what we want to stop the cycle of, these over and over. And I tell people, this is what I'm looking at, participant. I want this to be the last entry in this long list, so that we don't have to make this any longer. And, and I tell them, I recognize this is not who you are, but this is what you're here to talk about, right? This is why, you're in court and having to sit before me. And, but this is what the public defender looks at this list with them and goes over their history with them. And then, hopefully, that these things, this is called a description of criminal history. Hopefully we can stop that in the tracks and make the community court case the last case. So community court coordinator, that's Summer. She, and we've kind of already gone over all of this. But do you want to talk any more about what you do?
So I do the assessment. They check in with me weekly. I do a couple of ways they can check. Well, they have to do a couple of ways to check in with me, not just one. I have them complete a form, and that just it's just a basic form, the name, what did you accomplish this week? I mean, it's bubbles they can fill in online. It's nothing huge, but it's just kind of a good thing. They can upload their documents if they did any community service or any treatment forms or anything there. It's kind of an accountability thing to teach them that every week at this time you have to do this. So I'm teaching them responsibility. And then the second part of the check-in is we do our peer groups, or I might meet with somebody during the week, or we talk on the phone, or we meet in peer group, talk on the phone, meet in person. I mean, a lot of these people, some of these people require a lot of attention sometimes at the beginning, and that's okay. I'm pretty much available 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for them Monday through Friday. So that's how I leave myself open. I do crisis calls with some of them, and I do crisis calls with anybody in the community, basically that, might know about it. I've met in court. I sometimes assist them. Most of the time I set appointments for them at the beginning because I want them to be successful. And I also don't want idle hands. I feel like if there's any gap there, they're going to just wander off and get lost. So I get them right into their appointments. And then after that, we set some goals weekly. So every week, everybody has a different goal. But like this week's goal might look for somebody look like community service, or maybe sharing something in the peer group, or getting their license status, or drug and alcohol assessments, all kinds of different things. And so then I also follow up by contacting all these providers and staying on top of them for all the information and making sure that the participant I'm working with is getting cared for all along the way, because I don't want anybody dropping the ball, because if they drop the ball again, there goes my participant, possibly, not always. And I want to do the wraparound care so that they aren't out there going, oh my gosh, what do I do? Because that's what they do in regular court, is they're handed this list and they go off and they're like, well, I don't know how to do any of this.
And it's overwhelming.
Yeah. And so I try to act as a support for them. I'm their case manager. I'm also their peer support at the moment, and I'll probably always be a little bit. I hook them up with resource navigators, with resource centers, as you were sharing earlier. I meet with a lot of resources, different resources. I try to find new ones every week too, not just in our area, but all around. And yeah, I have to keep track of every time I talk to somebody or all the data like that, who entered in. There's just so much of it. And then like she was sharing, I assist a lot of the defendants that aren't community court. So I help the attorneys a lot with stuff like that. Even Ivor or Tom might be like, hey, I know this person isn't community court, but can you help them find a DV advocate? Or do you want, they're not having luck with this. Can you help them? Go see Summer. That's usually what everybody says. And I don't mind. And so that's just kind of what I do. I stay pretty busy.
Yeah, she's very busy. And it'll be nice to have that added element of the peer counselor within our dedicated program. And so we do have the money for that, as well as our mental health therapists. So I'm looking forward to getting those people on board and working with Summer to take a little bit of the heat off of her because she's
Yeah.
very busy.
I won't just direct them to DSHS or anything. I'll actually sit there and fill out the whole application with them, like help them. Or I won't usually let them leave me, even if I've just met them for a minute. If they don't have medical, I try to at least sign them up for medical, because that way I know if they leave and something happens, that they're covered and they'll get the care they need, because that's just huge to me. I feel like that's such a important thing. And housing, and I'm working on a comfort closet, I guess, in a sense, but I've been paying for my own storage, but we've been collecting stuff in case people need stuff too, so.
And, I'm sorry.
How many clients do you have, or how many are in the program?
For ours, I think we're at like 8 right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
I have to check that again. We just had 2 graduate. I just entered,
But
or I
we're
just
about-
did a few more. Yeah, I would say about 8.
Oh, okay.
Almost all females right now. It's very strange.
Yeah, well, we just got Van.
Yes,
We just
did.
got there. Thank goodness.
I was like,
I was like,
oh.
Get it-
But it's
get it, got it.
interesting, the things you notice when you're doing these jobs. It's like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
But,
Yeah, and Summer also works with me in Black Diamond
mhm.
Municipal Court, where we just had our 2 graduate, and she also works with me in Enumclaw, where I wear the prosecutor hat. And she and I work together a lot different. I'm a lot different as a prosecutor, aren't I?
Yes, ma'am.
So we work in Enumclaw together as well. So, and each court is really different, isn't it?
They are,
Yeah.
it's been a really great learning opportunity, I think. I wouldn't have expected I would have expected maybe this court to be a little busier than like Enumclaw per se, but
Mhm.
that court is so busy.
Yeah.
But the communities are so different too, and so it gets very interesting.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see now that the drugs are illegal again. I'm expecting to see drug charges. And these are the crimes that are like perfect for community court: possession of drugs. Yes, boom. see
Oh,
Summer.
yeah, that is one other thing I wanted to share. I get them, even if they don't do community court, I try to get them into some kind of MAT program, which is the medicated assisted treatment. So they're either, it's like,
Explain.
yeah, medicated assisted treatment is like Suboxone. If they're on opiates, they might be on like any kind of number of drugs that they've came out to help wean them off the street drugs and, onto a more pharmaceutical. So they're more receptive to like treatment options, and they can actually learn. Because as a drug and alcohol counselor, I used to do intensive outpatient, and that's like 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And some of these people, because when I started, they didn't have these kind of medications. They would just be sitting in there nodding off, or, it's like, okay, you're not getting anything out of this. And so they started medicated assisted treatments when I was still doing that. And I noticed such a difference, because people were receptive, and it's saving some people's lives. It really is. I mean, at first I was like, oh, you're just trading one drug for the other. But the more I learned about it, the reality is for some people, it's literally keeping them alive. The other option is street drugs and death. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
So.
The medicated assisted treatment, I've done some trainings on this and why it is important for opiate addiction. And now we've got fentanyl, which is even different, more different than our traditional heroin and other pharmaceutical drugs. So there's new treatments being developed for fentanyl. now as well. So we learn more and more all the time because opiates affect the brain in such a unique way, and we really don't understand. Like the medical community doesn't really understand everything there is to know about how opiates affect the brain. And so we're just constantly learning more and more about what works and what doesn't. So the other thing that Summer does is they do a weekly meeting, just you, prosecutor, public defender, and to staff those, the upcoming week about, and they talk about, okay, how is Joe doing? And, what challenges do we have with Joe and what do we need to be working on with Joe? So there's just a lot of hands on the person all the time, to make sure that, we're moving forward instead of backwards. And then the data collection, which is your favorite part, I'm sure,
Mhm.
right? And so we gather a lot of different data documentation, to, since this is a brand new program, we want to figure out, what we're doing. And so we have this gigantic spreadsheet that,
I've narrowed it down, but I'll
Yep.
keep track of everything. Pretty much people entering community court, graduating community court, to every resource that I give them. I have to write down the resource. I mean, it is what it is, but it's important. I think a lot of it too is I like seeing it because it reminds me, oh yeah, I sent this person here, I can send that person there, but I try to do everything covered by their insurance. And if I mean, that's dipping into community court grant is my absolute last thing if I have to, because there's so many good resources out there as it is. And so I'm trying to utilize those so we can keep them around as well. So it's important to keep track of all that, and it's a lot of fun.
and this is a list of some of the resources that Summer refers people to. Some of these you might kind of recognize, and then some are specific to, treatment programs or Recovery Cafe that does a lot of just like basic needs of life. There's a great list of, it's definitely not exclusive, but these are,
Yeah, no, definitely not. And Royal Life, I think I'm gonna start utilizing them again more because they're starting to take state and they're Sumner, so that is good.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with do you take state insurance?
Yeah.
If that's a no, then they're probably not going to be part of our program because almost everybody in our program is state health, so. Okay, and the conclusion is it's a great program. No, I've
Second that.
I have actually been thrilled with our first year, our pilot program, and I'm absolutely thrilled further that the state is recognizing how important this is and allocating funds for us. And so with this next round of funding, it's now a state appropriation, it's not a grant. So we have funding that goes from July 1st through June 30th. So again, with that grant, the main source of monies are to pay for Summer, to pay for mental health therapist, pay for a peer counselor. And I've also, the state and the administrative office of the court recognizes that especially at the part-time level, those of us that are working in community court are working a lot harder than we normally did before. And so there's additional funds to pay for both myself as well as the prosecutor and the public defender. And so in the next, I don't know, couple of weeks, you'll probably be seeing, what those numbers are going to look like, but it's all paid for from the state. And we just are going to go year to year, and hopefully the state will continue funding those items. The other parts of the fundings are the trainings that I talked about, some of the trainings. There's one that is coming up in October. Is that the drug
Yeah,
Drug-
I think it is October.
drug counselor / treatment / community
Drug
court?
court.
Drug court. It's a 2-day training. Summer and Stacy Lamont went last year. I went to one of the days, not both, but it was very effective. You learn so much by going to these resources. We'll do another 2-day community court retreat with a couple of other local community court within our region. That was one of the most effective retreats or trainings I've ever been to, just getting together and kind of talking about, what's working and how can we do this better. And that was really great. And then the big conference that is going to be in Anaheim in May of 2024. and that is also covered by the state appropriation. Other things that are going to be covered by the state appropriation are some things like the community care closet. When we need to, buy winter coats for people or shoes or something like that, whatever somebody might need, we'll have the funds to do that. Phones, if somebody needs a cell phone, they can't get another way, we can loan out cell phones with SIM cards. We have hotel money. If somebody is ready for detox, ready for inpatient treatment, but we don't have a bed date available for them yet, we can put them up in a hotel for a few days so that they can be safe and off the streets while they're waiting for that bed date. We've got some money for that. We've got money for transportation like Ubers or Lyft or taxi or whatever. We've got a little bit of money for treatment services. I think next year I'll probably ask for more, but we've got some money if we've exhausted everything and we need some money for treatment services. We've got money for that. Am I forgetting anything else?
I think that's it.
But yeah, so we're really lucky. I think we got 177,000 I requested 179,000 and we got 177. So I was very proud of that because a lot of courts didn't get, I don't know how they figured out who was going to get what, but Sumner and Black Diamond both got almost everything that they asked for. So I was very happy about that. So we've got another block of money for this next year, and we'll be able to have the tools, the personnel, and the resources to take our community court to the next level. So, any further questions? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's the most rewarding program. It's the most rewarding part of my career that I've ever done in 27 years or whatever it is. It's the most rewarding part of my career. And I can't wait to see what, our next year is going to teach us, because we learned a lot that first year. So
If I can share on that, yes, we
Yeah.
did. I think I decompressed from the last year at our last graduation and I just started bawling. I mean, I really lost it because it's like we are so busy just going, trying to make this program so good and get these people out here and working and just to see like people graduating all at once. And I was just sat there for a minute. I was like, oh my gosh, it's working. This is amazing. I just lost it.
yeah.
It was funny.
It can be very emotional. We had 4 people graduate all at once in Enumclaw. That was a week. We had Rigo graduating in Sumner. We had 4 people graduating our first graduation in Sumner, and 2 people graduating with our first graduation in Black Diamond. That all happened in 1 week.
Yeah,
So we
it
were
was
all
hard.
from that. But that was really wonderful. And one of the really greatest parts of this program is, let me just talk about Jaden for a minute.
Yes, please.
Jaden
Mhm.
was somebody, I used to be the Buckley prosecutor, and I'd prosecuted Jaden several years ago. She got through that and, successfully completed everything she needed to do. But then she got in trouble again in Enumclaw. And it was right at the time that we were starting this program. And Steve, our public defender there, and Summer put their heads together and they said, and I didn't really want to put her in the program. It was like, I don't think this is a good idea. But they convinced me that Jaden was the right person. Sometimes you make exceptions, right? So Jaden has been an absolute star, like shining star in this program from the very beginning. And during the time that she was in community court, she went out on her own and did all the training needed to become a peer counselor, graduated from that program, has her certificate for peer counseling. And now that is who I want to hire for our peer counselor to assist Summer. And I think she's going to be amazing. She's been basically doing the job.
Yeah, I've been
through
training
the-
her for quite a while.
But she graduated from the Enumclaw's community court program, and there was never a moment that we had any struggles at all with Jaden. She was just an absolute example of, how this program can work the very best. And so I really look forward to working with her if she's if she's ultimately selected, and I hope she is.
She has a lot of people's success in the program too, because in our peer groups, we are a family is how it feels. And we don't just, oh, you're gonna do this and then, everybody talks to each other like, hey, I'm really sorry you're going through this. Here's a good idea what you can do. Here's some self-care. And Jaden right off the bat just shined. I was like, wow, what a selfless person. She always had something to do for somebody, or can I help you with this? Or really wise words to say to them. And she just, I was like, let's try this. You want to help me with peer groups for a while? And it was just amazing. So yeah, watching that connection that she had with people, and if
Yeah.
she wasn't there because she had an appointment or something, people would just lose it. Like, where's Jaden?
So watching Jaden's success and seeing her graduate was definitely an emotional moment for everyone. And so, yeah.
Oh, yes. So I worked in the court system for a bit, and I know that it's a place that people don't want to come to. But what I see from you, the two of you, via your presentation, is how enthusiastic you are. And I would assume that the participants are picking up on that. And I just think that that's a fantastic thing. So I just want to say thanks for really embracing the program and bringing yourselves into it.
Thank
Because
you so
it'll be
much.
So helpful
Councilmember
for
Cole.
everyone.
I appreciate those words. It's always good to hear those types of words, to know that we're doing the right thing because we work really hard.
Yes.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Do you have your mom glasses on?
I had to use my mom voice on Thursday
Oh.
a couple of times. So I'm glad I didn't have to use it today. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and talk with you and just kind of give you, an update on what's happening in the court. And so I'm always happy to come and share.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, wearing many hats this evening. Thank you. This evening, I will actually be covering items 2 and 3 on tonight's agenda. So, and these are related to some payroll code updates and some payroll process changes that we're going to be going through. So payroll process is an internal process at the city. So the payroll process has to be accountable to the citizens, to the elected officials, the mayor, but it also has to be accountable to our employees. And with that, what we really strive is to be accurate, transparent, and efficient in how we process payroll. So back in 2018, the city moved to implementing the Munis software system for our set of financial softwares. At that point in time, the Munis people came in and they reviewed how we process payroll, and they said, man, that seems kind of odd. You do it differently than most people do. And we said, yeah, we do, but that's kind of how Sumner does things. And we'd like to keep it this way. And they said, well, that doesn't really work with our system. It's not designed to process payroll the way you currently do it. So they left us with an option. Our option was to change or for them to change. So we went down the road of, we talked to our unions and we said, maybe this is a good time to kind of change how we do things. And at that point in time in 2018, Jason was in my position and he had discussions with our unions and they weren't at all interested in making any sort of changes. So we went back to the software people and we told them, no, you need to change your software to fit our process. And they did. They went about that process and we hired new payroll people and we had a pandemic. And 4 years later, in August of 2022, we finally went live on a kind of newly revamped version of Munis payroll. So currently we're using it and, employees are being paid accurately. And we've kind of gained some efficiency just through some process changes. And a lot of this was built out of working remote, having to go paperless, having people working in a hybrid work environment. But really what we've kind of discovered is we're not getting the full functionality of the software. It's kind of one of those square peg round hole situations. And we realized even back in 2018 that probably we needed to change the way that we do payroll. So that's kind of where we're at tonight. So what we're looking at doing, the big thing is we're looking at changing kind of the way we pay people based on pay dates. So currently we pay people semi-monthly. So you're paid 24 times a year. It's a monthly salary divided by 2. You're paid on the 5th and the 20th. So depending on how that 5th and the 20th falls, we have variable kind of payroll due dates when people have to turn their timesheets in. Sometimes in order to get that payment to you on the 5th, to the bank before that, a payroll period would end the 31st. You might have to turn in your timesheet, 2 to 3 days before the pay period has even ended. So at that point in time, you're guessing, I think I'm going to work Thursday and Friday. I don't think I'm going to be sick. I don't think I'm going to take any last minute vacation. I don't think I'm going to work overtime. That doesn't really work. So then what happens is, when you have to do those things, you wake up and you're sick and you change your timesheet. You're either calling the payroll department last minute to make an adjustment, or we're doing a retroactive adjustment after the fact. Hey, remember that last pay period? I worked overtime on Friday, or I was sick on Thursday, so I need to adjust that. It's a time-intensive, inefficient process. So what we're proposing is now moving to be paying people every other Friday, starting in October. So this would be for the pay period from October 1st to the 14th. It works out perfectly. That's the beginning of the quarter. October 1st is a Sunday, so that's the way our work week would start. And we'd be paying people 26 times a year. So every other Friday, like clockwork, employees will get paid. Friday, you'll turn your timesheet in. The following Friday, you'll get paid for that preceding 2 weeks, always 80 hours in a pay period. Really a much better way to do this. But to go from the old to the new, we have some code adjustments and some internal personnel policies that we have to change. So what we're discussing tonight and what you'll be seeing at the next council meeting are 2 ordinances. The first one is Ordinance 2867. So this actually updates the pay dates. Our pay dates are in code, so those have to be changed. While we're in the personnel policy section of the code, we also have a couple other changes. One is a change to kind of increase some flexibility in hiring. Currently, our positions have 5 salary steps, steps 1 through 5. The first 3 steps are approved administratively by Jason. The way it currently works is if we want to bring an employee in at a step 4 or step 5, that approval needs to be done by the council as kind of a checks and balances. That is a slow, time-consuming process to get it on an agenda and get it in front of all of you. So the proposal of this ordinance is to change that and change that authority to the mayor to approve. We also have state law requirements already that we have to justify why we're paying someone what we're paying them. So that's an additional checks and balances in that process that's new, that wasn't there, I'm sure, when the code was originally written. And then, like I said, we have some kind of general language cleanup. There were some benefits that were in the code that we don't have. We had some other things that said they were paid monthly. Now they need to be adjusted to being paid per pay period because we no longer have monthly pay. Then the second ordinance is Ordinance 2868. And what this is an update to the compensation schedule. So as you all know, the compensation schedule has to be adopted annually by council. Currently, our compensation schedule is listed as monthly salaries. Well, no one's getting paid monthly or bi-monthly anymore. Now they're going to be paid bi-weekly. So we had to do some math, and we will be presenting a new compensation schedule that will either show people with an hourly wage or a per pay period wage. A per pay period wage will represent 2 weeks or 80 hours worth of work. But really, this is just a change in presentation. It doesn't have any financial impact. We double checked the numbers. The software system does hourly wages out to 4 digits. So we did do some truncating and some cleanup for presentation purposes, but we've stuck to it that no employee is going to be negatively financially impacted. There might be some small differences based on rounding, but it's I think less than $5 over a full year's worth of salaries, and it just has to do with the extra decimal places. So some additional details. We have been working, like I said, this will go into effect October 1st. We have been working since late April, early May with all of our bargaining groups on this change. Wages, hours, working conditions are all mandatory subjects of bargaining, so they're all things that we have to clear with our unions. In fact, case law is the city of Sumner. Back in the late 80s, we implemented this without checking with our unions, and we're the case that says you can't do that. So we have worked with our unions, and thus far, all unions have signed off on this. They've all agreed, so that's good. In making the change, it's a tremendous amount of work for our finance department, for our payroll department, for our HR department. It's not something we've taken on lightly. We feel that it's the right way to make the change. That's why we're okay with spending the extra time to do so. But also employees will have a change as well, right? They're going to go from 24 checks to 26 checks. Annually, they're going to make the same amount of money, but they're going to get a little bit less every paycheck. Those paychecks used to come on the 5th and the 20th, where they had their mortgage, set to be deducted on the 6th, or their car payment or car insurance on the 21st. They have to make those changes because those pay dates are not going to fluctuate. So in consideration for that, working with Jason and the mayor, we're suggesting that we give all employees $500, kind of on that first new paycheck at a lower amount to kind of help with that transition.
Does that include city council? I doubt it, but we are a city employee.
That is a fantastic question. I'm sorry, it does not. Your salaries are set by the salary commission. So not only can you not get $500, we also had to make sure that we didn't give you an extra $3 or $4 extra a year because of rounding. Your salaries have to be to the penny exactly what was approved. I'm sorry, no. So it was a great question though, and it was something that we thought of. So on top of this, we also have some kind of internal personnel policies that we've addressed and will be addressing, things like what happens if payday falls on a Friday, all of those things. Those are always available on our internal SharePoint intranet site for our employees to review. And then, should any employees have questions, we always have a payroll email available. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, I do have one question, and it's about ordinance 2867. There was actually at the very end of it, there is a paragraph that talks about management leave and that there's no cash out value. And it's being changed to say there will no cash out value and will not be carried over at the end of at the end of the first year.
Yeah. So
However that is. So does that mean that it's just the initial year that?
So we have changed that, and the way that we have been applying management leave is kind of really different than what code says. And the reason would be is if you were hired or you were given management leave at the end of November, right now it says you have to use your management leave by the end of the calendar year. That doesn't seem fair. So what we've done with this code change is it essentially gives you 1 year from the time that you've received management leave to then use it. And if you don't use it, then you forfeit it.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Because I thought something totally different. So thank you.
Can you explain what is management leave?
Yeah, so management leave is kind of similar to vacation leave. It's additional time off that's granted. Sometimes we will give it to an employee that's worked a tremendous amount of hours. Maybe they're a salaried employee and they've worked a bunch of time on evenings and weekends. So Jason has the ability as a city administrator to give them management leave to kind of help compensate for that. Or if we hire in a new employee, we can't quite meet them on a wage requirement that they want. So to kind of help them with their transition to Sumner, we say, well, we'll give you 40 hours of management leave. So you have some time off kind of in your accrual bank to start. And then they would have a year to use it. And that's actually a great example for an employee that's hired at the end of the year. Then they would have a full year to use that as opposed to having to use it at the end of a calendar year. Nope, 500 is just a one-time upfront payment. That very first paycheck, October 20th, is when the employees get 500. one time and one time only, and we feel that we have the budget flexibility with our existing salary allocations to be able to pay that $500 out and not have it impact anything.
I heard that, but employees have too much that they organize. So, I disagree.
Yeah, we do realize that employees have 2 months to get prepared financially, but we do have some employees that live paycheck to paycheck and struggle, and getting a slightly smaller salary is going to make an impact. So we felt the $500 was warranted. And really what that did is that helped us with our conversation with the unions is where that started. We worked with the 3 unions. We went back and forth, and we kind of came up with a dollar amount that we felt that was necessary to kind of get them to agree to this deal. And then at that point in time, we applied the $500 universally to all employees because we felt that was fair.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. If you were talking, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Jeff, I fully support this. The one question I have, and I'm sure you've talked about it in your different groups, the $500, is that gross or net? And do the employees understand that if it is gross, that it is subject to income tax withholding?
Yes, that is, it is a gross amount, and they would be aware of that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So who do we have on there? There's something on the chat.
It's been there.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Oh, all right.
Thank you. And as I said, this will be coming next week at the council meeting.
Thank you.
2 weeks.
2
Sorry.
weeks.
Yes, I already gave you next week off last week. I'm glad you remembered.
Thank you very much. Okay. City administrators report. You have nothing? Okay. And do we have any council meeting changes?
I will miss the finance meeting because it's on the 9th, but I believe I'll be updated on the 7th with Jeff.
Okay. And committee meetings, that would be anybody else? All right. Seeing none. I think we are adjourned at 7:30.